better sex in relationships.
All right. Thanks for joining us. And cue the music.
Welcome to Loving Beyond the I Do podcast. This power couple is building stronger marriages one day at a time. Talking about real issues on love, relationships, and marriage longevity. Let's break down the barriers and engage in healthy conversation with your hosts, Jason and Tina Marie. Take a seat and buckle up because things are about to get real.
Hey, welcome to the show.
Welcome back, everyone.
Welcome to Loving Beyond the I Do podcast. We are your hosts, Jason and Tina Marie.
That's me.
And we are here to inspire and empower individuals with actionable strategies and insights for developing meaningful and fulfilling relationships using universal principles, effective communication, and mindset shifts.
And you may ask, how do we do this? We do this using the Manifest Method framework. And you ask, what is that? Here it is. Using the Manifest framework. Mindset, awareness, nurture, intention, focus, empower, strengthen, and transform. All right. So we have a special guest with us today.
Deborah Cat is on a mission to bring more juicy, connected, delicious, satisfying sex to the world. With over 20 years of experience in Dom and certifications in multiple styles of Tantra, kink, massage, flirting, dating, and relating, she has worked with hundreds of clients, from the corporate CEO to the newlywed couple, to have a satisfying relationship and sex life they relish. Deborah is the host of the Better Sex Podcast, annual Better Sex Summit, bringing together her extensive network of experts for her audience.
Let's get right into it and welcome our guest, Deborah Cat from the Better Sex Podcast. Welcome, Deborah.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, you guys are amazing. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
We're excited too.
We are excited to have this conversation. Yes, we are. All right. So why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Thank you. So my name is Deborah Cat, and I am a certified tantric educator as well as a professional Dom. And I like to say that I got lucky in my past life. And so I got to be born in San Francisco, which means that I have a unique upbringing. And as such, I got to see all sorts of different kinds of relationships. And I got to see what works in relationships, whether it was a more traditional relationship or whether it was something more alternative. And so getting to see all of those different kinds of relationships, I got to really distill down what works when it comes to relationships, and more importantly, what works when it comes to sex.
Ooh,
all right.
That's what I want to talk
I'm
about.
glad you said that, right?
Yes.
So I'm sure people have asked you, so what is the Better Sex Podcast? And not only what it is, but just kind of how did it evolve? How did it come about?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking. So I've always been one of these people who, let's have a conversation about that. And I'm pretty shameless.
So you would say, let's have a conversation about sex?
People would we'd start a conversation. It would start over here about something like, making a recipe. And then all of a sudden we were talking about, well, my partner does this, or I don't want to do that, or, he wants to do this and I don't want to do that, or I want to do this and he doesn't want to do that. And so I started just having these conversations and unpacking them. And I realized that, that not everybody has these conversations, right? That I was really lucky. My mom was a nurse. So growing up, we talked a lot about the anatomical parts around sex, but we didn't really get so much into the emotional parts. We didn't really get into the desire parts. We didn't really get into the idea that pleasure and sex could actually be together. Most of us know how to reproduce, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like we know what's supposed to happen.
Yep.
But many of us, don't always take it any further than that. And so the Better Sex podcast was born out of these conversations and realizing that it was an important conversation to have, that really good sex is an important part of a relationship. And it's part of what makes life worth living, in my estimation.
No, I agree.
Okay.
And one of the things I really want to be clear about is that, like, sex means, we have this idea that we actually know what it means, right? Mm-hmm. And what we're often talking about is this idea of reproduction. Okay, and right. So, that is the very physical aspects of, part A goes in slot B, and, there's climax and there's orgasm, and then there's naps. And the thing about that is that doesn't work for everyone, right? Like, we have different desires, we have different speeds, we have different wants, and we come to sex for different reasons, right? Some of us come to sex because we just want stress release. Okay. Some of us come for connection. Some of us come because, it's traditionally a place where we can be held and can be vulnerable in a way that isn't always available to us in our outside lives. Okay. And so, coming to sex for different reasons, it's like, are we actually there for the same reason our partner is? And we don't have to be, but we do need to kind of be able to, we need to be able to at least understand and support our partners in the places that they're at. So.
All right. Okay. So when you were having these conversations, did you find it was it usually in a more intimate setting, like maybe you and one person, or was it in a group setting where people were open to sharing?
Well,
there's usually a topic people kind of shy away from when they're in a big setting.
I was going to say,
yeah, absolutely. So, people would have. There's different. So first of all, I will say that generally speaking, when you get a group of women together, there tends to be a bit more sharing. There tends to be a bit more like, oh yeah, I've had that experience. Now, the downside about it is
Mm-hmm.
women can get on each other's rides and be like, yeah, he's terrible. And instead of being like, oh, wow, that sucks. Is there something else you want there? Have you, so women do tend to talk about sex more in groups and be more willing to share their experiences. And men tend to be more one-on-one. Although that being said, I have had, men's groups invite me to talk to their members. I have had the opportunity to come into men's groups and be like, what you got? What are your questions? Let me help you out here. Like men's groups are really important. And I want to guys, if you're listening and you don't have a support system of other men, I highly, highly suggest that you consider investing in that. However, you want to also get a woman's point of view on some of the more intimate things, because, guys don't always ask their partners, right? Guys don't always have not the willingness, but like, it's an awkward conversation, and
sometimes it can be for people.
I was just going to say, from a man's perspective, we feel like we should know. So why should we really be asking? Our job is probably to pleasure you. And if we're asking, meaning we don't know what we're doing.
And I'm
right.
And I said that because you were talking about men, and on your intro, or on your thing, it says that better sex for men. And so what does that look like? Is it just sharing with them what women like, or what their partner likes? Is it sharing with them how they should perform? What is it when you're dealing because it says for men. So what is it when you're dealing with men that you're working with?
Oh, well, so, I would say this is across the board, but I feel like men have a really hard time with this because, as he said, men are sort of told you should know, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they also have this idea of what sex should look like, right? It should be him, leading, him, moving things forward. A lot of the more traditional idea of sex is all about, him leading and his desire.
Right.
And there's this very specific way that it's supposed to look, right?
Right.
And not all men have those fantasies. And so allowing a space for men to actually decide, or reflect, what actually feels good for me. It's like there's this sort of universal idea that every man wants to have I don't know if I can say this on air, but wants his cock sucked, right?
Okay.
And
I understand.
And yes, there are a lot of men who want that, and there are some men
oral sex.
Oh, thank you. There are a lot of men who want oral sex, and there are some men who don't. But if they are a man who doesn't, they have this image that they have to stand up to, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he may or may not have actually considered that, this is not in his pleasure. He may just decide, oral's what I'm supposed to want, oral's what I'm supposed to do, and so I'm going to go for that, right? Without actually slowing down enough to say, does this feel good to my body? And, we always see, we see sex as something that happens hard and fast most often, right? And so there's this expectation that that's going to be what feels good to the male body. And again, that's not always the case, right? There's lots of places on the body that feel good.
Right.
And a lot of them are taboo. It's like when you're with oral, for instance, it's like, there's one spot that you're supposed to put your hands and one spot you're supposed to put your mouth, but there's a lot of area there that can feel really good.
Okay, so you have any questions?
No,
Jason?
go ahead, baby.
Okay, so I was just going to say so with us, we deal with relationships. And so when we're talking about that, I usually say that sex doesn't make a relationship, but it definitely breaks a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So what is some of the things that you would tell couples that may find themselves kind of at that borderline where they're having sex, but may not be enjoying it, right? Or
It's more of a chore?
Could be a chore, or it's just, it is what it is, right? Because like you said, society has this universal idea that it's to pleasure the man. And so women find themselves not being pleasured. So what do you say to those couples? And then I'll come back with another question.
Absolutely. So first of all, I invite them to slow down. I invite them to, there's some really great books out there. There's some really great techniques out there. One of the things that I love is the erotic blueprints. And the erotic blueprints is this idea that there are different, there's different speeds that people like sex at. There's different ways that we like to have sex, right? So one of them is sensual. And the sensual is all about touch and smell. And there's, they want things a little bit slower, and they need the atmosphere to be a certain way for them to relax and enjoy, right? And then there's the sexual blueprint. And the sexual blueprint is yes, please, now, whatever service, it doesn't, there's not a whole lot of
in between, right?
Yeah.
Start to finish.
It's let's get to it.
Exactly. And then there's the energetic, and the energetic is more like that, the eye gazer and the breathe, they want to breathe together. They want to eye gaze together. They want to slow down, and they just want to feel each other's presence, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the kinky, which is all about taboo. It's they want, for them to be really aroused and for it to be fun, it has to be, there has to be an element of taboo to it. And then there's the shapeshifter, which is I love everything. Let's put it together.
I guess this was sort of like that 50 Shades of Grey, right?
Kinda. But so once you actually have a sense of what works for you, then you can actually start checking into well, what works for my partner? right? And one of the interesting things for me is that I have noticed that, you would think, right, from those descriptions that men would be, the sexual blueprint. The like, I'm ready, I want it, up against a wall, on the floor, on the ceiling, let's go, right? The truth of the matter is I've found that that's not actually accurate. A lot more men tend to be energetic, right? They want things to be slow. They want things to be a little bit more intimate, right? And there's a lot of women who are on the other side of that are just like, you're home, I'm home. There's a service. Let's go, right? So finding what works for you, and then being able to communicate that with your partner.
I was going to say, so how do you openly communicate that, right? Yep. Because as you said, sex is kind of like that taboo topic. People don't want to talk about it. People shy away from it. And especially,
I don't think they know how to talk about it.
Well, I know with men, we had a retreat. And when we separated the women in one side and the men with the other, men did not bring up sex. But as you said, women share. Women talk about intimacy. We talk about sex. We talk about touching. We talk about what's not happening, what we wish was happening. But men don't do that. And so how do you have those conversations in a marriage? Because as you said, most people haven't grown up in an environment where it's
right.
It's just openly spoken. So how do we
received, right? So even if I speak about it, it needs to be received well, because I don't want to bring up something and then I feel ashamed of what I'm saying.
I was going to say that, right. and it's just like it's so much going on in this one little conversation, because some women, when they first get married, they don't know what they're doing, and when they get into a relationship, they don't know how to express what they want without feeling ashamed. Or if they're too kinky, they're like, okay, what is he going to think about me?
Now he's looking side-eye at you.
Yeah. Or if I don't know how to be open and relaxed and just let my body feel good, and I can't do it, then I'm embarrassed. So it's like so many different levels. How do couples start to actually have that conversation?
Absolutely. Well, so first of all, somebody has to be willing to bring it up. Right. And it's the person who isn't getting their needs met. And the first time it comes up, it's kind of an explosion. Right. And so, that's so it's like once the doors open, hopefully there can be more conversation. I love what you guys talk about in your timeout talks. Like that is so, so important. Like as a couple, being able to have a time where you can talk about things that, and you're both willing to have that conversation. So, generally speaking, one of the partners has to be able to bring it up, and it has to be able to say, babe, I love you. I want the best for us. And there's this thing that I wanted that I think we can work on. And it can be fun, and it can be pleasurable. And in the end, both of us are going to have more of what we want, right?
I think so many people, like I said, are raised with just this kind of rigidness. And I think more women than men. Like you said, we have an idea, men have an idea, I'm just supposed to go in and just, boom, boom, boom. And women are like, I don't know how to express I need my needs met, or I just don't know how to tap into that freaky side, right? So
yeah. And I think, to your point, the other side of that is women are we're conditioned, we're taught that to let him lead and to go with his lead. And, when he says, baby, did you come? We're supposed to be like,
sure.
And I really my heart goes out to couples, because it is so hard to push through that, right? It is, like you said, it is a hard conversation to have, but it's so important and it's so rewarding, right? So the other side of starting that conversation is, let's experiment. Let's try it, right?
Okay.
So, for instance, one way to start the conversation could be to share a podcast with your partner, to share a book with your partner, to, gossip about your friend. No.
Now that'll get us started.
So
but to create that space, to start that conversation. And, it is a risky thing. But the thing is vulnerability, right? Saying the thing that we're afraid to say can be so powerful. And
Absolutely.
It can be powerful and freeing for our partners, right? Because chances are, if the sex isn't good, it's not good for both parties.
True.
Right. And it's, it can be revolutionary to the relationship to be able to take a step back and start finding out what works for you. I mean, one of the places that I tell that I invite clients to start with when I work with couples is it's let's take a look at your bedroom. Do you have pictures of your parents there? Do you have pictures of the kids? Right? Is this a place, is this a place? Exactly. Is this a place that is fun and sensual? Right. Mm-hmm. And what I like about that is it often will start a conversation about well, what do you find sexy? What is hot for you? And to really start looking at the places of what is pleasing and what is sensual. And the other assignment I give clients right off the bat is, so in Tantra there's 3 very basic pillars, right? There's movement, there's breath, and there's sound.
Okay.
And so you can practice that outside of the bedroom as well as inside of the bedroom. So, with, say, movement.
Wow, I hope that we're not in a restaurant moving and going,
Well, that's going to be one hell of a meal.
Right, people are like, I'll have what they're having. No, go ahead.
Well, I wasn't going to go there, but, but seriously, moving your body, right? Just knowing the feeling between I tell people it's if they're a runner, if they're a dancer, if they do any kind of exercise, notice your body before you go running and notice your body after it. And there is a huge difference, right? And that time after that you just come home from running, that is turn on in your body. That's what your body feels like when it's alive, when it's turned on, when it's, ready.
Yeah. Jesus,
so noticing that, right? And then with breath, it's there's all sorts of different kinds of breath work. But, really learning, even if it's just starting to practice taking the deep breath in through your nose, holding at the top of it, and then exhaling, right? And then just noticing when you're in a situation where it's you're noticing yourself get tense. It's well, what if I take a deep breath in and then exhale? And then for sound, that can be all sorts of things. That can be, exhaling with a sound. That can also be, making a request or making an adjustment. One of the things we talk a lot about is making requests and making adjustments, right? So, because people are always afraid of well, what if they're a no? It's well, if they're a no, that's great. That means that there's a whole lot of other things that you can start thinking about. And you can also ask oh, well, if that doesn't work for you, is there something that does?
So I don't know. A lot of conversation in the bedroom.
It's a lot. When we going to get down to the activity?
Right. And people may not, and why I say that is because some couples and so we're dealing on a lot of different couples and a lot of different levels, right? So let's move into that era where couples are not having sex. And you may go, what? But there are couples
sexless marriages, yes.
Sexless relationships.
Yeah.
And so for whatever reason, right, for whatever reason, either they lost the fizzle or maybe something happened. What would you tell them to, if they really, if they want their relationship, how would they move back into that area of sex and pleasurable sex? Because sometimes people stop having sex because, like you said, it's boring. And
that's and I think that is one of the biggest reasons that people stop having sex is it doesn't feel good to their bodies. They're not having the kind of sex they want. And, when their partner comes towards them, this is where affection stops. right, is that oftentimes, one of the two of the parties, like they're not having the kind of touch they want. They're not having the kind of experience they want.
Exactly.
And anytime their partner comes towards them, they're like, oh my God, it's going to end up being sexual and I don't want it. So it's like they shut everything down, right? Everything gets shut down. So, I think I can't imagine a good answer that's going to not have a conversation in it of some sort. Right? Like, yes, you can, because, and there's a lot of personal work that needs to happen on both sides. Because again, one of the biggest things that shuts sex down and also relationship is resentment. Right?
First and foremost.
And so what happens is somebody has a resentment and that resentment builds. And it's so anytime anything comes up, it's like, nope, and they often talk about, I think this happens on both sides, where it's like when things are not going well, the first thing that gets pulled back is the sex and affection. And so, at some point there has to be some sort of clearing experience, right? Mm-hmm. So, I give my clients a lot of tools for self-clearing, whether it is a journaling exercise, whether it's an exercise with a partner, or not a partner, but like I invite people to have allies. And I'm very and this is generally like, who's the person that you can go to that you can say all the things and they're just going to hold the trash can and say,
who's your garbage can? Who's your garbage can?
There it is. But they're not going to get on your ride, right? Like they're not going to give you a whole lot of like, oh, that's terrible, you should leave.
Right, exactly.
But really like hold that space for them to be able to clear out, and then just be like, is there anything else? What's at the bottom here? What is it? What do you really want that you're not getting? What is it that you're not saying? And so, yeah.
So when you get to that point, right? So you get done throwing up in the garbage can. So now you're at the root of the issue. So now do you go back to your mate and have that conversation now that you're at the root, and you just come out just like, these are the hard facts. I don't like this, and this.
So here's the way I do it. It's more like you get to the bottom, and it's usually something around, I don't feel worthy. I don't feel attractive. I don't feel, I'm afraid of something. I'm afraid you're going to leave me. Like that's generally that is generally the underpinnings, right? Mm-hmm. So how can you go to your partner from that soft place, right? And just be like, for instance, with that, it's like, what is the conversation you're willing to have from there? Like, baby, I love you. And I feel like, I really just want to be closer to you. I want more touch from you. I want to give you more touch. And I often invite people to think about what is it that they want to give their partner, right? Because chances are, if you're not having sex, right, not only are you not receiving, but you're not giving.
Right. And part of that, I think, is when we're talking about communication breakdown, right? When we're talking about resentment, there's a communication breakdown. And oftentimes what I see with women is that even in the part of expressing it, that men they don't receive it. They can't, lots of times couples are having these conversations, and I don't just want to say women, because men too. Men say, well, I'm trying to express what I need, and she's not hearing it because I say I need more and she gives me less, So these conversations, but there's a communication breakdown. So when you say, baby, I love you, let's do this. Sometimes it's hard for people to even just get to that point, because if you're not having sex 9 times out of 10, you're not communicating, you're not talking. Right. So maybe how do we do something? How do we give the audience, a small little snowball that can roll and hopefully get bigger? Like what's that one little thing they can do to get the ball rolling?
Yeah, I mean, I think the I hear what you're saying about the hard conversations, right? But they have to start somewhere, right?
Absolutely.
It has to start somewhere. So, I mean, I'd say step one is to take a moment, empty out, whether it's like a journal that just says, I am so frustrated about X, Y, da, 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 da. And then next thing is what I want instead, right? And then go to your partner with like, babe, I have an edgy thing I need to say to you. I have a hard thing I need to say to you. Can we have a conversation? Right? Because if there's, you know, other than that, it's like, where are you going to go?
Right.
Well, that's
I mean, it can be the piece around, again, like, hey, I saw this on a podcast, or hey, I heard about this, or hey, but there has to be a starting point somewhere. And I think the big thing is, it's like somewhere in there, the conversation has to say, are you willing? I am willing. Are you willing?
And I was going to say, what about religion? Because like you said, with religion plays and I don't want to get into religion,
right.
but I think religion plays a big role in how women
how we view sex?
Yeah, how women view sex, how women think they're supposed to be submissive and not be fulfilled. And so how do women get out of their own head when it comes to, hey, I want to have pleasure. I want to, for people who may think that being religious means that you got to be
have
that
fun.
Right. In
Whatever the man
bedroom,
says goes. Yeah.
Right. So what about that category of women?
Well, I have to say that is not my area of expertise.
Okay.
Yeah. Well,
but what I will say is, from everything that I know about, spirituality, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything that I know about, so I come from the Jewish tradition. I'm not very good at being Jewish, but like, that's my tradition. But there is this reverence for the body and for the vessel and for the bringing together of commitment. And so, I mean, that's the place where I would start. And then I would invite them, I honestly, if somebody's got a whole lot of, if their concerns are very religious, I would probably outsource them, probably send them to you. Because I know that is your,
definitely have to do some
I
work.
would just tell them, put the religion on the shelf, right? Put the Bible, then when you get back out of bed, pick it back up.
Well, that's the other thing I say is, it's like, if you think about it, when the sex is good, who are you calling on, right? It's Jesus, it's God, it's like, oh God, so.
Okay.
So, I mean, I think there is a place to invite spirit and into bed. Absolutely. But like the laws and everything else that we can put on the shelf.
There's a reason why it's like that, right? Yeah. And so what about women, maybe older women who are starting menopause? I know we had a segment where women were sharing that once they're going through it, it becomes unpleasurable. Right.
Yeah. Well, again, I think, the body changes, and, so it's like, what are the places? So here's the things that don't feel good, right? So oftentimes it has to do with, the body changing. It changes, with dryness. So, find the lube that works for you. Get there's amazing pillows and props that can help you to find the right, the right angles and positions that feel good to your body. And slow down, and partners are often, it's like we put a lot of emphasis on women in menopause, but the male body is also changing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes,
and so, this is the point where the male body, doesn't have quite so much testosterone. And so, the firmness changes. Right. And so, like, oftentimes this is a place where experimentation needs to come in, right? Like, oh, this part of my body, which, for the last 30 years has been like my erogenous zone. It's like, it's not so much anymore. Like, maybe this part needs to changes. But I mean, I find that my clients, will often say, what works for me now is something that is a little bit slower, and that I also need to be open to using tools and,
Right.
lube, and potentially, vibrators, or potentially, things that help me get into different positions. And then just, noticing like what is true in our sex now.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it used to be true. And this is for most couples, right? The first 18 months, if there's a surface, things are happening, because like we're in that new relationship
Right.
energy. We're in that energy of, our bodies are saying like, oh, this is a partnership, or this is a person that I want to partner with. And this is how our bodies bond. Right. So after that, we generally, things shift. I mean, I see a lot of clients at, 3 to 5 years
Mm-hmm.
where they're like, it's not the same. And it's like, well, no, it's not the same.
And it's not supposed to be.
It's not supposed to be. So what do we do now? And so, the thing about sex is it is always changing, right? It is, what feels good, and, what works on Tuesday may or may not work on Sunday.
True.
And so, when we are able to actually stay present, stay connected to ourselves and our own pleasure, as well as the pleasure in our partners. So, so my partner and I have been together for 24 years.
Okay.
And he's 62 and I'm not.
Good one. Okay.
Things have changed a little bit.
Right.
And so, the way that we interact has changed. It's a lot softer, no pun intended, and a lot more, touch, and a lot more,
Sensuality,
whispering things in each other's ears, and, but coming together in that place of still looking for the connection, right? Looking for the connection, whether it is, the weekend marathon that it used to be, looks very different, but like, having the time and the connection. It's like flirting now sometimes looks like making the bed, right?
So we have to make sure that we understand the signs, right? We have to be in tune with the signs.
Absolutely.
Making that bed, right?
Right. Like if I'm suggesting that we change the sheets, there's a reason.
Right.
There you go. It's like,
if he's suggesting that we take a walk or a drive, or wants to, and this is something around conversation, right? So like we both have our different signs of like, for him, when he's got something that he wants to talk about, he'll invite me to go on a walk.
Okay, that's a good place to have a conversation.
And
must be violent. He wants to keep you out in public so you don't go off.
Well, exactly. But there's also like when we're walking, our bodies are moving, we're breathing, and we're moving like this versus like this.
There's a rhythm.
There's a rhythm, but there's also like when we're side by side, we're more like a team. When we're across from each other, that can often bring out that like more animosity oriented. Yeah, that adversarial connection. And so, it's something I found with a lot of my clients is that, if there's something that they need to have a conversation about, can they take a walk? Can they, sit next to each other? Can they, if the love language is touch, can they touch each other? And really just, again, creating that space. It's, what I loved about when we were speaking is, how much you were pointing out that like having a good relationship is about maturity.
Yep.
It's about like, it's about, it's an important growing experience is to be able to like, have enough of yourself to be able to hear that your partner is not happy, right? And not make it completely about you.
And that's what I was thinking about when you were talking. I was like, yep, this is a mature conversation, because if you're going to come to me and tell me, X, Y, Z, I need this, I need to be mature enough to understand what you're saying and relate to it.
Or what I was thinking is that for couples who maybe the partner can be a little bit too demanding. This is what I'm not going to do, and this is what I don't like, and so how can because these are conversations, and as you said, couples need to be mature and not only giving it but receiving it. But we also have to be aware of how are we giving it, right? How am I expressing my needs to my mate, or expressing how I'm not going to fulfill their needs?
Oh,
right,
yeah.
because sometimes they're expressed, but your partner may not always pick them up.
Oh, that's true. Just because I'm expressing don't mean that you're going to agree with it.
Exactly.
Then that's another conversation.
Absolutely. And, there's this idea, like I talk a lot about willingness, right? Like, because we need to be willing. We need to be willing to have the conversation. We need to be willing to hear no. We need to be willing to hear yes and actually receive, like all of these steps are complicated. It's great if your partner says, oh yeah, baby, I totally get that. And I want to put all my attention on you. Right. And then it's like, I'm going to get all their attention. Like that, there's that thing.
Right.
One of the things that I talk to women about is it's like, can you actually receive? Can you actually receive what he is offering, or are you going to make it so difficult, right? And so like it can only be like this, and it can, that you can't actually receive.
See, that's exactly what I was saying, right?
Yeah,
so
make
so
it
many,
difficult.
so many women are like, nope, I like it this way, or I want it. No, I don't want it, and so you can't. It's lost. The whole connection is lost.
So I have a question. So how do you have couples that have the conversation around toys? How do you get them to maybe bring those in there?
Yeah, some people are just dead set against it.
I know, right?
And,
You bring that up,
it's
and
like,
it's just taboo.
Yeah, it's like taboo again. It's like, again, being mature, understanding that,
it's not a slight on a man. If you decide that you want to bring a toy into the bedroom,
or with some women, like I said, again, with the thing of religion, oh, I would never. And the thing is that they were created for pleasure, right? If we look deep enough, we might see some things, that can tell us in the Bible about pleasure. So, so people want to see what they want to see. So, but just bringing that conversation to your maybe your mate who has been dead set against it, and so how would someone like bring it to their partner and just to try it?
Yeah, again, it's tricky conversation. I invite people to buy toys from themselves, right? To experiment with themselves, to see if they even like it to begin with, and then I invite them to like have the conversation of like, babe, you are my favorite toy. Like, I love it. Nobody. Nothing compares to you. And I find that this might enhance things, right? Would you be willing to try it? Right? Back to willingness. It's like, in my vocabulary, there's yes, no, and let's try it. Right? And I invite people to just be like, okay, it may not work, right? It may, sometimes I feel like the idea of toys is actually better than the reality, because there are many toys that are awkward, that you need to make sure you got it plugged in right, or the batteries, or whatnot. Honestly, I think for the most part, and the best toy that we have is our whole bodies. It's our touch, it's our attention. For women, the most potent aphrodisiac you can give a woman is good attention. For a man, the biggest aphrodisiac you can give him is approval, right? And what I mean by that is, it's like, as we said earlier, it's like there's this deficit that we have. Like, unfortunately, culturally, we've been sort of trained to like not give each other approval and not give each other the kind of attention that we need. There's the stereotype of the guy who is, on his computer or playing his video game or whatever that is. And then, his partner's feeling like she doesn't get enough attention. The other side of that is, men often say, and I hear this a lot, I don't know what to do to please her. I don't know what to do to make her happy.
Right. Yeah. Because again, goes back to they think they're supposed to know,
right.
And everybody thinks that a man is supposed to know.
Everything that I'm trying, that I know to do, is not working.
Right. So just, again, that you said. So that's going to be our new thing for this particular podcast. Yes, no, and are you willing to try? Was that what you said? Yes, no, and I'm willing to try?
Yes, no, let's try it.
Let's try it.
Let's
All
try
right.
it.
Yes, no, and let's try it.
And here's the thing. So here's one of the things that I say with couples is it's like, let's make your relationship an experiment. Right? What is something that we can experiment about? There's no right, there's no wrong, there's just data.
Mm-hmm.
And take turns. It's like, you're going to set the timer for 15 minutes, and one of you is going to be the receiver, and one of you is going to be the giver. And the giver is going to ask the receiver, where would you like me to touch you for 15 minutes? And the receiver gets to say, I want to be touched on, from here to here. Right? It can be your torso. It can be, from the top of my head to the bottom of my toes, but you come up with this space that you want to be touched in. And then, it's up to the giver to explore. Now, the receiver is not laying there and just taking it, but they are just like, they're allowing their partner to explore. And if it feels good, then, there's nothing better than a deep sigh. That feels so good, right? You're going to get more of that, right? And then if there's something that doesn't feel so good, it's like you can say lighter or a little to the left or a little to the right. But trying to hear these things as instead of like, we often hear any kind of correction as I'm doing something wrong.
Right.
Trying to hear that as like, oh, there's a spot that's even better.
Right.
I want to be on this spot. If moving to the left is going to help, great, I'm there. If going a little harder is going to help, I'm there. If slowing down is going to help, I'm there. Because I want my partner to have pleasure. Now, the other piece is that I want it to feel good to me too.
Yeah.
And so, I like to tell people, think of it as petting the cat, right? You pet the cat because it feels good to the cat, but it also feels good to your hand. And if you slow down, you notice like, oh, there's that, like, it feels, there's the fur and there's the warmth and there's like, the way that like you can feel the heartbeat underneath your hand, but like really trying to find the places where it feels pleasurable to you, so that you can give that to your partner as well. I'll often talk to couples, about the sex they're having. And it's interesting how often it doesn't feel good to either of them.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, because I think there's so many underlying issues that we just don't talk about in the bed. So if we can't handle the issues outside of bed, we're definitely not going to talk about the issues inside of bed. And so, we often talk about unpacking, right? So if we, I would just invite couples to unpack what's really going on. Oftentimes, men are looking at intimacy as just sex.
Yep.
And women are looking
where we start.
Right. And so women are looking at, intimacy as
everything
touch
else
and feeling, right? This is what feels good to me.
But I would say that I want to say this about men, right? So if you notice, pillow talk, generally speaking, is really important to men because it is a place for them to be vulnerable and it is a place for them to be intimate that does not exist outside of the bedroom.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, we have some deep conversations.
Yeah, we love pillow talk. What?
Yep.
and I mean, not all men, but not all couples, but I just really, I feel like that is a thing that, like, is often said, is it's like, men don't have these spaces like women do. And, we put so much pressure on, on everybody to be a certain way.
Right.
But like, that's a particular thing. And so, and yes, women also want to talk after sex, but unfortunately what happens for us oftentimes is we get really charged and excited, and we want to talk about like refinancing and, redecorating, and
we on the other end of the spectrum.
Right.
And, the guys are like, I feel into myself in a way that I don't feel myself other times. I mean, one of my teachers talks a lot about like, ejaculatory control and semen retention. And he's saying that, like, for women, when we have these climactic orgasms, right, where it's like, it's a big experience, we get more energy from that, right? Where men tend to not have as much energy for that. Right. And,
but that's okay, though, right? That's okay.
It's great. It is fabulous. It's just something you need to know. Like, I really had to learn that after sex was not the time to talk about projects, because
like, just let me mellow.
Right. Exactly. Like, let me just be held. Right. And I'd be like, okay.
But I feel so alive.
Your mind is racing and want to do everything
right now.
Exactly. I feel so alive. I'm on, top of my game. It's like, there is a thing that happens. I mean, I think, how do I want to put this? Like, you can tell when a woman is satiated, right? Like, she just has a whole different way of showing up.
Yeah.
Right. And a woman who is
absolutely. When you talked about resentment and it's being held in, and what are you giving out? Like, all of those things are being held in. You can't even express what you need to express as a person because everything is bottled up on the inside. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a really, like, self-pleasure is super important. And I think one of the things that often comes up in relationships is that, like, there's resentment about each other having self-pleasure, right? Mm-hmm. That belongs to me. I mean, it's like, I'm serious when I say, couples will come to me and talk about, like, well, he's masturbating, and I don't get that attention. It's like, that is his practice. Right. Mm-hmm. He gets that practice, just like, if it's a problem, I invite you to practice a little bit.
Right. But again, we look at it from the men's perspective, that's something natural, where a woman is like, oh, I can't do that. I wouldn't dare do that. So, I would just invite people to just open up. Like, when I say open up, I mean, open up your opportunities. First of all, you can't know what is pleasure to you until you experience the pleasure. Sometimes you need to know what you want.
Sure.
But
absolutely. Yeah. And, I mean, even something as simple as, like, having clothes that feel good to your body, right? Something as simple as, having a space that is pleasurable to your eyes, to your, to be in.
To your senses.
Like, these pleasures, like, it matters.
Yeah, it makes a difference.
It really does.
So how would we, so as we wrapping up, what would be something that, because dealing with couples from, not being married to 5 years in marriage to 25 years in marriage, and often the conversation is, how do you not let the spark die down, right? How do you keep the spark alive? And then if it has died down, like, how do you reignite it? And even though we're talking about conversations, if they can't get to that point of conversation right now, what's one tidbit you can give them to just reignite the spark, or to make sure that the whole flame doesn't go out? Like, put something on there.
Right. Throw a log of something.
Yeah. So I think, individually stoking your own fire, moving your body, having your own pleasure, and, having your own practice is so important, right? Whether it is a spiritual practice of whether it is a more formal traditional religious practice, whether it's a spiritual practice, having personal practices is so important because it helps to keep you involved with your own growth. And so having your own practice, be it a movement practice, a breath practice, some sort of, maybe using your voice in some way, whether it's singing, whether it's like, using your body and your breath and your sound is so important. And the thing about it is it's like when we change,
Right.
we have a ripple effect, right?
Exactly.
If I'm feeling, I'll tell you, if, I joke a lot about the like coming back from the gym or whatever,
Right.
but like when I come back from working out and I'm relaxed and I'm in my body and I'm feeling good, like I'm going to give him that smile and I'm going to get that smile in return because we affect each other, right? So I would say, how to keep that spark alive is to start with yourself, start with your own practices, and then putting approval on your partner, right? Finding the place where you are in approval, right? There's so many different ways to load the damn dishwasher. The fact that he did it is amazing. If you have to run the dishwasher twice, do it, but be in approval of and appreciate the fact that it was done for you. Gentlemen, turn off the game. Well, not the game, but like
sometimes they need to turn off the game.
Right. One of the games. Maybe
one of the games, but put some attention on your partner.
Right.
Yep. So 2 things. Start with yourself, move your bodies, make some sound, and then put that attention on your partner. And put that attention on your partner in a way of curiosity.
Wow. And so as we say that, I also would invite couples to try something new. Try exploring. We always talk about the love language, right? Mm-hmm. So find out your mate's love language sexually. Like find out what they like. So that might be my next book. Sexual love languages, right? Okay. What's my mate's love language in the bed? Even though, you said there's kinky and there's all these different kinds of pleasures.
We can use plenty of data.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, be like, if you can, I know some people don't like the idea of the date night, right? But putting time aside for yourselves to explore is super important, whether it's a new restaurant, whether it's going for a walk, or a hike somewhere new, or, taking a drive, or ordering something from Amazon, or any of the other
date night. I need to meet who doesn't like date night.
Right.
Wow, they are really stuck. Who doesn't like date night? Even if, as you said, even if it's a date night where we're going to try something different, we're going to try to see what either one of us likes. What is our pleasure? Just part of that reigniting or just understanding, as you said, as we change, as we, age and get wiser. Hopefully we're more aware of what it is that we can give our partner and what our partner can give us. Is there anything you want to add?
No, this has been a great conversation. Very eye-opening, right?
We didn't hear much from the man's perspective.
I was taking notes. So, fellas, what I was doing is I was taking notes, right? So make sure we're paying attention on this episode because we missed the mark on a lot of different things here, right? So I want you to it's okay, like you said, to pleasure yourself. It's not a bad thing for that, so don't get criticized for that as far as the women as well. But also pay attention to your mate, right? Find out what her needs are. Understand it's not always about your needs. It's not so fast, boom, and we're done. Find out how she wants to be touched. And, and if you do that,
you may get more.
You will get more, and it'll be more pleasurable.
Right?
Right. Not
exactly.
just more, but more is good. Yeah, I'm not going to never turn down more. More is good. But we want it pleasurable. So
absolutely.
So that's why I was taking in all these notes for you fellas so we can know what we need to do.
And so make sure, guys, if you have any questions or comments, you just let us know.
Yeah.
And Deborah would be more than happy to let us know. So any last words or anything before we close out?
Well, before that, tell them how they can get in contact with you,
Absolutely.
Deborah.
And anything that you have going on.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. So I have a class coming up called Relationship Mastery. It is 8 weeks. It's online, and that starts March 10th. And so that's coming up. I also have podcast episodes coming up, including the one with Jason and Tina Marie.
Yes.
I'm very excited. And you can find out all about that at deborahcat.com, and that's DeborahKat.com. And I'm super excited to be here. And I think the one thing that I really want people to leave with is the idea that our bodies are made for pleasure. And relationships are an amazing, they're an amazing experience. And they are, as Brené Brown says, the quality of our relationships really talks about the quality of our lives. And so the better that we can get at relationships, the better we get at relationships, the better our lives are going to be. And that starts with self-relationship.
All right.
That is the main one.
That's wonderful.
Yes.
All right. So I think that wraps up another episode for us. How about you?
I think so. I think I took enough notes. Now I'm ready to go ahead and use some of these notes.
All right.
Go ahead and get some of this data.
All right, so let's get ready to get out of here. So we are your dynamic duo in relationships. Mm-hmm. And as always, we're in it to win it.
Next week, until next week, guys, we'll talk to you real soon.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Lovin' Beyond the I Do podcast. Head over to iTunes to subscribe and leave a review. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Legendary Relationship, or visit our website at legendaryrelationship.com. Till next time, remember to make every day count.